I definitely don't want to think about planning anything though. That's maybe it could be to some extent it might be a bad idea because I should think ahead a lot more. But these days I really want to just wake up every day and see what happens. So we were buskers basically on the street, and at the time we did it, the street was alive with music. It was an incredible time to spend, and you know, it's hard to explain what it was like, but it was brilliant. It was all these incredible memories of being young and being free and crazy on the street.
Had a real cool about him, you know. He just oozed a kind of a quiet confidence, you know.
Deep, you know, like real. You know, not everybody's like that, really, but Mick always was.
For me, he was my hero, my prince, you know, like, I'd be so proud to be a friend of Mick's.
Just full of beans, like really mischievous, loads of energy. The passion he had and the way he sort of changed when he sang is kind of weirdly at odds with this very boyish, silly, fun kind of persona that he had outside of that.
He made a sound that contained all the energy and dynamics of a band just with his voice and guitar.
But he was always the cool one. Glenn was always jumping around and, you know, he was a ball of energy. Mick was the cool guy in the corner.
I kind of only realised that long after Mick had passed, kind of how much cooler he was than me.
There was a sort of magic about him.
And he was this relentless dreamboat, you know, in Mead. It's like everybody fell in love with him completely.
He was a gentleman. He was like a knight that stepped out of a story.
He was so selfless and kind.
Awesome guy.
Everybody kind of knew this is not going to end well.
It's, you know, obviously hard to talk about it because I know it's like 16 years or whatever, but like...
It shouldn't have happened. You know, that like none of this should have happened.
I didn't realise he was so badly broken up.
I think we all kind of expected the bad news that eventually came.
And you continue to question it and think about how tenuous life is.
All the ultimate life experience would be probably the end of it.
What happens to a spirit when it's so full of life and so full of his positivity? What happens to a man that's when he's just wrenched out of it?
All you need, oh, simple. My parents both moved to New York separately. They met out there.
Harry was there before me, so I think we were there about 5 years when we met. And we got married over there and had Maureen and Michael.
I'm the older of the two. Yeah, Mick was 2.5 years younger than me. So, but although he always called me his little sister. We lived firstly in the Bronx and then moved out to a place called Brentwood, Long Island. And then they decided, late 72, to move back to Ireland.
I never intended coming back, actually. My friend here dragged me back.
We were like all siblings, really. You know, we probably fought over everything, but when we were together, if you like, against everyone else. But when it was just the two of us, we probably fought over absolutely everything, from who had to wash the dishes to what channel was going on the TV or whatever it may be.
Me and Mick were in the same school together. So he was in like 6th class or 6th year, whatever, and I had just come into the school, so I was in 1st year. And I vaguely remember seeing him kind of sliding around the corridor. He didn't really walk, he kind of bounced as such.
But when it came to studying, Mick's studying was sitting upstairs with the guitar for 3 hours. I'd come down, yeah, that's another 3 hours done, kind of thing. And I always remember being out one day with my mother, and it was during the Leaving Cert. And we're walking down the street, and as we came to the corner, we could hear the music coming from the house. Now, we both looked at each other and thought, there's an exam in 15 minutes. You know, it was probably about a 20-minute walk to the school, but you could hear the music blasting out of the house, so that was it. I mean, music was going to be the thing.
I was pushing him too much to get a job, if you know what I mean. You know, you can get a...
You used to say a proper job.
A proper job. Here then I was working as a carpenter. I was trying to get Michael going into something. You know, the music was all, that's all he could think of was music, you know. But I took him to work one day and got him to get my hammer and a few things, trying to get him going or something, and he came home that evening. He said to Bun, "You really don't want me to be like my dad, 9 to 5 every day, you know?"
The idea is somebody going and working 9 to 5, like, why would you even consider it? If you don't write songs just at night. You know, you have to be available all day, every day to do that. So, you know, he knew what he was going to do very early on. He started his first band when he was 15. They used to rehearse in my parents' garage, and all the kids on the street would be looking over the fence on a Sunday afternoon when the gig was going on in the garage, kind of thing. So that would have been the first time he, I suppose, took it seriously, if you like. Now, at that stage, he'd already started kind of venturing into town a little bit, into the busking scene. Not an awful lot, but he was definitely dipping his toe in the water at that stage.
Grafton Street was just a shopping street in Dublin. You know, shops open, cars running up and down. It still felt very like the 50s in certain ways. And then this gang of kids came out with long curly hair and all start playing these mad trash country songs.
Grafton Street was it, that's where it was. That was the pure thing, you know what I mean? Where you'd go and you'd play for, you know, you'd play for 4 hours without stopping. You know, your fingers would be falling off your hands, your throat would be coming up your, you know, out of your neck. And then you'd go for a cup of coffee in the, you know, in the Coffee Inn around the corner. And you'd take out your guitars and you'd start playing, you know, we'd go have a break and we'd go and we'd play in the Coffee Inn for an hour. And then we'd head back out onto the street for another 4 hours.
We were all broke. I was getting a plate of chips and then a pot of tea for 2 and sitting there and a packet of fags and sitting there for as long as possible until we were thrown out.
And that's where we all used to hang out. All the people that then became sort of key figures in the music scene over the years. So I used to see Mick in there regularly.
Like the Coffee Inn was like our home up on South Ann Street. It was like where we'd always meet there first of all, and then when we played, we'd go in afterwards with the case and just dump it on the table, and all the money would get done, you know, and we'd jam in there, we'd sing in there, you know, it was just a place where we always were. So
I was working as a waitress there, and had just moved to Dublin, and I'm pretty sure the first time I met him was when I was serving him as a waitress. Is one story. Another possible story is that I met him while he was busking on Grafton Street. So it's one of the two. I can't remember I can't remember first time I saw him, but I know it was like one of those two places.
I met Mick in, I guess it was 1985. It was either 84 or 85. I just started busking in 84. And around summertime '85, or maybe springtime, I remember this lad would come in and check me out. You know, when you see someone, you know, as a busker, it was rare to get people who'd stop and listen to you, but occasionally people would. And this young fella stopped and listened with a couple of his mates, and he just had a mad cool kind of head on him, you know, like kind of long. I remember he was really, what's the word? Actually, there's a picture of him in that particular when he was. Kind of looked a bit like sort of Nick Drake, or really thin and kind of withdrawn, you know, very quiet young fella. But I remember just chatting to him, and he was from Clondalkin. I don't think I'd ever met anyone from Clondalkin. And I said to him, "Bring in your guitar." And he's like, "Can I?" "Yeah." And I said, "Yeah, bring in your guitar and we'll do some stuff together."
Well, how comes your sister's in drag? And where are the clothes that she had? Oh, well, I seen her of late. I think she put on some weight like a man.
That's kind of it. I was actually walking on the street and I heard this guy singing a song on the street, and I thought it was Níall Young. It sounded like Níall Young. So I just waited till he was finished, and he was kind of sitting on a stool selling magazines across the street. So that's how I remember.
But how comes we both go to schools on different sides of the street?
I got a guitar and I went out, and I went out on Grafton Street, and I started a song, and I was thinking, you know, in my head I was going out to do this thing, and I kind of stood up and I hit the first chord of a song, and my body just melted. It was like the world kind of turned and looked at me or something, and so I nearly crapped myself basically, and I just sat down and I went, okay, I'll do it later. But then I walked further up the street, and I saw Mick and Glen and Mark Dignam, some of the Keela lads, and because like I'd never talked to Mick, this was actually the first actual words we kind of properly spoke to each other. I just went up and said, "Look, I've come out busking. Is there any chance I can play with you, you know?"
The group just started getting bigger and bigger. I mean, you'd go up Grafton Street on a Saturday afternoon, there could be 20, 25 people all busking together.
The crowds were amazing. I mean, it was like, you know, rock and roll stops the traffic or whatever. Like everything, the whole street was kind of shut down for it. The cops used to come the odd time and break it up.
Like Saturday afternoon, we'd have 200 people in a big arc around us, you know, blocking the whole street, and you know, so we got arrested like 4 or 5 times, I suppose, at least, you know, for like, you know, disturbing the peace or blocking the path or whatever it was, you know. But like you get arrested, and then all the crowd would be screaming, "Let them go, let them go," and taking photographs of us getting into the back of the Black Mariah and all this, you know what I mean? It was the whole thing was just a buzz, like.
To me, it was a million times better than anything you'd heard on television or you heard on the radio, you know. It was like, I suppose the best way to describe it was a deeper kind of raw kind of soul. And they all had it. Mick had it, Glenn had it, and you know, the lyrics were deeper than what you were hearing on the radio. You know, even where their voices went was deeper than what you heard on the radio, you know.
And I remember cycling down Grafton Street, and just from the top of Grafton Street in early, hearing this voice, and the closer I got, it was Mick used to busk with a fella called Níall Cosgrove, and both of them were there, and Mick was singing Trumpets, which is a Waterboy song, and it was just like very haunting.
Yeah, when the Waterboys first came to Ireland in '86, I could see that a lot of younger bands were copying what we were doing and inspired by what we were doing. And I used to be able to tell when I walked up Grafton Street and I would hear half a dozen buskers doing Waterboy songs, and sometimes even whole gangs of buskers all gathered together, usually with Glen Hansard in the middle, doing Waterboy songs. That was great fun. I used to love experiencing that. I don't think I ever joined in with them, but I used to stand secretly and listen.
It was kind of like a magic circle. I don't know. To me, it was amazing. To me, it was the most magical thing I'd ever seen in my life, you know, was this magic moment, I suppose.
And Mick couldn't wait to move out of home. It was like he was really into just getting a flat. I was living over in Terranure with my girlfriend. And so I'm 17 now, so it's like 1987. We moved into Harcourt Street, the two of us, and we took our first flat. And the flat we lived in used to be Radio Dublin's headquarters. It was an old radio station, a great flat. But basically all the busking rehearsals, all the gang that was playing would always go back and end up spending the night or hanging out. But that was really, I suppose, the height of our friendship was sort of 87, 88, 89, and Mick went to London. Mick met Sharon Horgan, and Sharon and Mick went off to London, and Mick became a Hare Krishna.
I mean, I think initially it was just a little mini adventure. I think, you know, we wanted to hang out together and, you know, we were also young. Then it didn't sort of matter what you did with your time.
London can be a hard place, and it was a particularly hard place then. I think, you know, it was very much the squat stream was very strong over there. It was very high unemployment, both here and in London. So everybody was kind of living on their wits.
But I was living in this community where, you know, in this sort of squatting community that was pretty creative itself, you know. He used to busk over here, you know, we used to go to the tube stations or we'd go to Leicester Square.
Like, it was illegal to busk in the tube station, but you do it. And you know, inside, underneath, in the tubes, you know, you have all their big posters on the wall all over the place. And there'd be certain corners where people would always busk, and you'd write your name on the poster, so the posters would be just covered in names, you know. You'd come along at 2 o'clock and go, Mick, 3 o'clock, you know what I mean? And everyone would do their hour or something, and they'd split off, you know.
You know, I'd stand there with the hat and, and he would play, and, you know, some nights we made absolutely no money, and some nights we really, you know, coined it in. I mean, we weren't like lovers for very long. We were friends for a lot longer. We were, you know, we were both really young, and we went out in Dublin, and then when he came over to London, we, you know, continued our relationship, and then, you know, it didn't work out.
It was a stressful time living, you know, no money, no real opportunities, you know. And I think when you pile on then, if you have a serious relationship that breaks up around you, that's really going to trigger some challenges in you.
I thought about him a lot. I worried about him. I wanted to look after him, you know. I thought, he's a skinny fella, you know. He's not as tough as he shows on. And I thought, well, you know, I played a bit of hurling. You know, if there's any issues, I can step into the breach, no problem, as you would for him. And I'd only feel very honoured to be given phone calls to step in for him anytime, you know. But I'd save up me dole money and head over to London to see how Mick was, you know, because I knew he wasn't going out doing yoga or breathing fresh air or, you know what I mean, jogging every morning or doing, you know what I mean. I'd get to London, I'd hop the tubes, I'd get down to Manor House, I'd get out of the tube at about 7 in the morning or something, I'd race off, I'd find whichever squat I'd call in. So I was banging on the door, and it was a big metal door, you know, because sometimes there was a lot of squatting and there was a little bit of cat and mouse with the councils and stuff like that. So sometimes they'd bar them up and metal it up. And he was living on his Toblerone in there with a couple of little puppies running around the squat. There was no light coming in because it was all boarded up. And it wasn't pretty, and he wasn't well. So anyway, I got really worried about him there. I was like, all right, come on, I'm living down in Kerry. Like, it's got all the light you need. It's got all the peace you need. You don't need any of these people, you know. Come down. And he did. And he really came alive down there. But maybe we should have spent longer. I was just excited by being with him. I thought, great, we're together now. Let's take on the world. You know, we wrote, like, he picked that song. I had some lyrics. We were writing together. And he wrote Friends down there, or he put music to it, you know.
know you are strong enough to keep on charging on, 'cause I am your friend.
And I thought, God, this is incredible. We can conquer the world with this stuff, you know. It wasn't all fun and games, but some of it was.
And you've heard me roar, and you've seen me break down, but you've also seen me soaring. And you've seen me high, seen me lose all my pride, and you've seen me die, but you helped me to rise up again, 'cause you are my friend. Yes, you are my friend.
The Mary Janes came into being, I suppose, in the summer of 1990. So the Frames were becoming the Frames.
But me and Mick's friendship, I guess, then was probably a little less. When he went off to London, I guess we didn't sort of see each other for a couple of years.
And it was sort of around that time that they, I guess, kind of, not splintered, but they all sort of figured out what it was they were doing and what kind of music they specifically wanted to, you know, veer towards. Because when I met them first, Glen and Mick seemed to be, you know, one person almost, you know. I mean, they kind of sang together or took it in turns, and it was hard to sort of figure out who the front man was, because there, you know, there wasn't really, and it was sort of both of them.
Glen and Mick were kind of like, it's almost like they became the leaders of different gangs in a way, so that they, in a way, kind of, not that they fell out, but they weren't necessarily tight for those years of the Mary Janes.
It was difficult for me when the Frames began. Me and Mick were both, you know, whatever we were going to do, we were going to do it together. And there was a kind of a difficulty for me in that Mick is an amazing singer, but Mick didn't do harmonies. Mick only sang lead, which is kind of very Mick. You know, I don't back anyone. I sing the lead. And so there was a problem with me and him, was that every time we sang together, I could back him up, but he couldn't back me up. You know, when you look at footage of any of us playing, it's always me singing harmonies to Mick. And so in a way, wanting to be a songwriter and wanting to start a band, I kind of wanted to be the singer of my songs. But Mick wasn't naturally a harmony singer, and it just kind of wasn't, it was never really going to learn. I don't think it was a thing for him that he was ever going to get into that. So in a way, I couldn't be in a band with him. And so the Mary Janes was him going his way, and it was kind of, those were difficult conversations for us to have as friends.
I had moved into a house out of home, and into a house with Simon Good, Carl, and the original drummer, Stephen, who I don't even remember his second name. Was it Hogan? And they weren't a band. And it was kind of like, you guys are a band, Mick needs a band, let's put this together. Do you know what I mean? It was that kind of solution-based. Oh, well.
I was in rock school at the time, so yeah, Simon Good, he was in rock school, so I kind of said, you know, I know this great guitarist, and so he kind of came along and kind of joined in. And there's another, our first drummer, Stephen Hogan, who was kind of a good deal younger than the rest of us, and he was drafted on board. So that was kind of like the original Mark I Mary Janes, you know.
So that was the start of it, but Stephen left quite soon. I don't even remember what, there was some cloud, but it wasn't a big deal. It was just stupid kid stuff. But Stephen left, and then they decided they didn't want a drummer at all.
And we were supposed to find another drummer, but we just never bothered, or it just seemed to kind of be one of those things that, you know, in in the haze of the time, just seemed to go by the wayside. So we just continued on as a kind of a three-piece.
It's because they created so much rhythm internally, they didn't really need a drummer, so we just decided to explore this, and they went on as this three-piece for a number of years. They did the first album as that.
I remember going over to the States in 1994 and bringing Bored of Their Laughing with me and playing at a couple of parties. And this was a time when, it was bands like Pearl Jam, and they all flipped. Anyone that I met over there flipped over the Mary Janes.
Yeah, there was just a really, really big sound for three people, and there was nobody doing anything like that in Dublin that I was aware of, or in Ireland even, or in the world possibly.
I love your every song, took that straight from me, and the picture that I get is you in a class of three, and I can't imagine you caring for anyone.
Heavy metal guitarist. Bass player is mad into like Talking Heads and kind of synthy stuff, you know what I mean? This hippie guy in the middle, you know what I mean? And you get this like incredible noise, you know what I mean? Never heard anything like it before. Never. Or since.
I sat, maybe 3 feet from him in sound checks, or at sessions, or just in a room, and he actually made the air quiver with the power of his voice.
But yeah, he had a different way of putting things. His lyrics weren't straightforward. They weren't. They were unique,
Trace horse flies and bottle tops, they're equal to your grin. Something changed your mind last night, you backed down your sin. And people kissing and twinkle too, feeling all in control. Centurion, you made me weak. You slither back and forth. So worn out like and troubled in an unprotruding wall. Oh, come somebody and show us where you live. Well, not as sloppy as you think, and how much can you give? Centurion, you make me weak. Back and forth.
We wouldn't say no to a gig back in those days. I'd say we did 300 gigs a year.
If you're a support band, one of the biggest things is drum changeovers, because it's awkward, it's messy.
And it has to be said, the Mary Janes got a lot of gigs supporting people because they were kind of low maintenance. But you went on after them at your peril, they could destroy the place.
We would go down to Dartmouth Square to pick up Mick, right? Who would be in a bad mood that he had to leave the house. He would F him blind, right? It would take him to the absolute last moment to get him out and into the van. Whereas Carl, if there was any planes involved, Carl would, we had Carl run away because he didn't want to get on that airplane for 30 minutes. So then Simon would have to drive like the Clappers in this banged out old black Ford Transit that was on its last legs to Sligo or Galway or whatever, on the crappiest roads possible. And all the time Simon suffering huge anxiety about us all dying on the roads. Then we would set up and do the gig. Then we would have a few drinks, a few smokes, and go home, and drop him back, and we would literally do that again, night after night after night.
When Mark joined, he added something, I remember seeing them in Whelan's, and there were parts of the gig where they sounded colossal, like Led Zeppelin colossal.
Definitely brought a totally different dynamic to the band in a very good way, you know.
But they also lost something. They'd lost a little bit of that strangeness as to what are these three geezers doing sitting on stools playing this kind of gigantic folk rock mutation.
There was an expectation that we'd kind of, oh yeah, now that's it. We've solved the biggest problem with the Mary Janes, and now, you know, all we have to do is get signed now.
Back in those days, a record contract was the Holy Grail, really, and it was seen as an impossible dream.
And everybody was running for to be signed up, you know, so you could get some tour support or get an album released by a record company.
It was as close to having a job, a secure job in that industry as you could get. You were going to be paid a wage, guaranteed releases on your albums, studios paid for.
I think Mick was very, I think he kind of put a lot of stock into that kind of stuff, you know.
They deliberately weren't successful, and I don't mean that as a, you know, they know I love them, so they know that's not a slight on them, but they deliberately weren't successful. They didn't want to be, they wanted to be, but they wanted to be on their own terms, but you can't be in life, you don't get to be. You can pretend that you've done it on your own terms, but you have to compromise.
There was a kind of some desire to move on, progress, you know, get more opportunities, being able to travel more, all that kind of stuff. But there's also this kind of counter thing where we were always trying to, you know, keep to our indie roots, if you know what I mean. I think it was at the case, that classic line, we let the music speak for itself kind of thing.
We went and we did a thing called Cork Rocks.
Kind of like some kind of showcase kind of weekend in Cork.
There was 40 people at the show, of which 39 were A&R men to see the Mary Janes. And we went upstairs to the dressing room after the show, and he we're the first band on. It's like 7 o'clock in the evening. We're finished at 7:30, right? And we've come down to Cork, which there's no motorway. Those days it's like 4 hours drive. And we come down, he goes upstairs, and I'm like, there's all these guys are downstairs. You have to go down and talk to them. Now you gotta go out, right? And he's like, let's just go fucking home.
And we just all walked out of the thing.
So there was no compromise. He didn't want to talk to them. He didn't want to deal with it, so he legged it.
So we had every record company in the world come to see us. Every gig we did, we used to do gigs in these tiny little, dirty little clubs, and you'd go into the dressing room afterwards, all, you know, sweaty, and then there'd be, you know, these guys there, you know, just shouting at you about loads of money and deals, and it's like, it never really made a lot of sense to me.
So there was always, I think, a lot of tension there, you know, because there was definitely a desire for the kind of the benefits, but also kind of a little bit of reluctance to engage in the things you'd have to do to get them, you know. And even the song Sham that's all about that. That's what that song's about, you know. It's about kind of how the whole thing was a sham, you know.
About running for fame, but I ain't got the mood, so I would be talking in vain. Well, I've got something to say, yeah, but I've got no time to pick it up.
Mick went off to Bosnia to work with War Child. Brought some of the Mary Janes lads with him, or went along with the lads.
He was educating all of us about this is what you can do, you know. He was the first of us to do it, first of any of the people. We were all too busy concerned with our careers, you know.
We ended up there originally to record an album, second album anyway, and we saw a piece on the TV about this place in Mostar called the Pavarotti Music Centre, where they were going to put a new recording studio in. Mark, the drummer, just went, let's go there. You come from Dublin. It's where you spent all your life, and then off you go to somewhere like that, which just is filled full of people who've been through so much, have come out being something very special.
This is my house, it's where I was born, and I won't come out for fear I'll get torn.
When we went and we met people and you see how they're dealing with being through a war, it's unbelievable, and it really does a lot for you.
One of the main things that we saw there, because of where we stayed, just right beside where there's a bus that's kind of sitting on its side, and it's in an area that's all blown to pieces. It was actually on the front line during the war, and this bus is blown to pieces, and it just has care written on it.
And it was during the time that the Pavarotti Music Centre was opening. So they actually played at the opening of it, which is something that a lot of people don't know about. On the opening night, you had U2, you had, a lot of big names. Pavarotti obviously was there, but the Mary Janes were the first band on stage that night. So that was a big one for them too. But I think they went out with the intention of, obviously they were going with War Child, but there was promises of, there's a studio there, you can record. They were going to record their album when they're out there. But I think what was going on there at the time, and the war and everything else, it affected them all a lot. So, they got involved working with children there. Some of them were orphans, others were just, bussed in every day from places where they had evacuated to, and they worked with children doing music and art therapy and all that kind of thing. So.
Because of construction delays with the music centre and some other difficulties we had when we arrived on the ground, we didn't actually end up recording anything at all as we'd planned to. For a bunch of guys that had never been exposed to that kind of thing before, the aftermath of war and the horror, the stories, and to see how people were, so positive about cleaning up and getting on with their lives.
11 years old, same age as me, 1916.
It really touched them a lot, just to see that side of the world and that side of what was going on.
had an incredible time there. I think it really changed him and came back from it with a lot of purpose. But at the same time, he was quite, I guess in a way, he was becoming a little bit disillusioned maybe with the fact that Mary Jane's maybe weren't progressing. They weren't progressing how they wanted to, or I can't really speak for that because I wasn't in the band, but I just remember there was a sort of a feeling of, where is this going?
You know, War Child was so important to him because he knew the importance of, you know, installing confidence and love in children. Obviously, children that were coming from extremely, you know, traumatic backgrounds and that are going through what these children were going through. And he just seen the light in children. He just seen it. And I think that's when I talk about having an evolved spirituality, whatever that was. You know, Mick knew that that was going on, and that's where he took his music and his energies too. You know, and you're talking of a young man, you know, and a lot of guys are that age kind of off looking to still chase the music dream and the rock and roll thing. But he was kind of like, this is what's important now, you know, and he loved children, you know. So he just seen the light, and that's the way Mick worked, you know. That's just the way, it's how he operated, you know.
You know, fizzled out rather than ended with a bang, or you know what I mean? They just never reached the potential, I think, that Mick believed that they had, you know what I mean?
It's a bit of an oversight. People forget how much soul, or how much of his soul he put into his performances. Do you know what I mean? Like, he really put himself out there. Very few people really deliver everything that's in their gut, and he'd do it constantly on stage, you know? And for him not to be picked up and looked after was really hurting him, you know? He was surrounded by people for the years in Dublin, you know? But he wasn't getting looked after by anybody in the industry, if you know what I mean. So he had all of these fans propping him up, treating him like a king, but the industry weren't giving him anything. He was not, you know what I mean? He wasn't getting any television appearances or getting looked after or getting gigs or getting signed or, you know. So I'd say he got just browned off with it, being everybody's king. For what? So they can keep partying around you, you know.
How long will you stay together?
Will we stay together?
Yeah.
Too long.
Yeah. Too long.
Personally, I think in the grander scheme of things, I know it's 9 years, but I thought we'd kind of made some kind of inroads by that stage. You know, there was kind of, and to me it was kind of slightly odd to kind of pull the plug on that, because it wasn't like that. Like the album completely flopped and nobody liked us anymore, kind of thing. If anything, it was kind of beginning to make some kind of impact, you know, or we were, as a band were, and so it was, I just think Mick had enough, you know.
Talent-wise, yeah, they should have been much bigger. There's no doubt, absolutely no doubt. They should have had a bigger audience, both in Ireland and abroad, but they didn't.
You know, could they have been more successful, or if they had not done 9-minute virtuoso jams? Yes, they could have, but would it have been the same? No, it wouldn't have been Mary Jane's then.
Everyone went doing different things then. I think they recorded something. Mark Stanky went off to Australia. Mick went off to Australia with him after a while. I think Brian Spallin stopped working with him. He got a job in the MCD.
At that point, I was starting to put on gigs. I had taken it as far as I could. I needed to focus on what I was doing, so we parted amicably. We had been friends at that point. You know, I don't know, I've been friends with Mick 7 or 8 years, which, you know, if you're only 22, that's a long time in your life, right? So we parted amicably. It was no big deal.
And you know, I remember calling into the flat, and Simon was bulling. Simon was gutted. Simon really did. Simon was living with him at the time, and he really didn't want it to break up. I remember Mick telling him, I keep telling him, Rona, I keep telling him, it's finished. He won't accept it. He's still saying, oh, there's a gig here. I don't want to do it. I'm done.
Watching time as it passes slow, and just to see the reasons why it must have come and passed me by. Or maybe I'm just blind, because the what I came and saw me holding back for someone. What I came and saw me holding on for someone. Hey. on like we couldn't see it in texting, like we couldn't guess what was next, like we'd taken all of our hopes and our dreams, and we put them out in the sun, because there's a beacon for everyone who couldn't achieve. And so come on, my son, it's like this, it's like a faint little mess, it's like a sudden change in winter calls, the breaking of a heart, but the queen of hearts and all my wondrous the world are no longer with me, and I'm sick of it because of what I came and saw me holding back for someone. What I came and saw me holding on for someone, holding on for the queen of hearts, for the queen of
I think Mick at that point maybe was in a delicate spot after the Mary Jane's finished. I think he wasn't sure where he was going.
Yeah, I think he was ready for a change, really, you know.
He got a job as a courier, started out on push bike first, and then he got a little moped.
When you're a bicycle courier, it's a roulette in town, and before you're going to get knocked off your bike.
I always remember Mick was kind of accident prone, you know. Like I do remember a few kind of arms in casts and, you know, legs in casts and breaking things and falling over and stuff. But like I suppose this was a different level.
He had come across Baggot Street Bridge and he was going straight up that main road, whatever.
Came out down the side lane like a lot of bikers do.
And a lady came across from a side street.
Both of them went for the same space, didn't see each other, and he just got wiped out.
I was working down the garage here and Vaughan called me and said, Michael's in Vincent's. I said, oh my God, we drove in and there's this nun standing over him, holding his head, you know. Wasn't there anyone near him, you know. She was brilliant because she saved his life, actually. Cause they say if he had a...
I think somebody had taken the neck brace off or whatever for the x-ray and didn't put it on again. And she was very angry about it, you know, because if he had moved, it could have done damage, you know.
I cracked my spine, basically in my neck, so... And I cracked this thing it's really small. It's called the odontoid peg. So I was told basically every day that millimeters either side, and I'd be either dead or paralysed. You know, so yeah, they quite enjoyed telling me that for some reason, and in the hospital telling me how lucky I was every day. You know, I didn't feel very lucky, but
I don't think I actually twigged how serious the accident was until I went to see him, and you know, he was in his kind of astronaut sort of brace.
He was in plaster, which came kind of from the back of his neck, right midway down his chest sort of thing, shoulders, the whole lot contained in it. So it was literally, you know, like that, you know, couldn't move around. And then he had a broken ankle on top of it. So
They had me in hospital for a week, and then they just sent me home because there's nothing else they can do for you when you're in this cast, you know. And I also smashed my ankle, so I had a cast here as well. So I couldn't walk, so I just lay there all day, every day, basically.
It was very hard because, you know, firstly, he could do nothing for himself. He was kind of dependent on people to look after him, so...
I think it had a you know, psychological and psychic impact as well as physical impact. And I think he would have kind of had to wrestle with a lot of those, a lot of his shadows through that period he had of just being in traction. And
he definitely, you know, was at his lowest point, I think, at that time. But I think that was the kind of, in a lot of ways, a turning point for him. You know, that was, he kind of hit rock bottom, and the only way was up, kind of thing. You know,
I think he really saw his life probably very clearly. And basically, you know, it's the wonderful thing of, you know, you go to the edge of something and then you realise you're still alive and you've got another chance, and you've been given another chance. And there was a big change in him, in his attitude.
But at the start of it, I kind of thought, I can let this beat me, or I can just, you know, be positive about it, you know.
He kept writing during that time, and I think his way of writing and the tone of his songs changed a lot after that.
He himself would talk about the change, you know, that he remembered a moment when he was lying in bed with the full body cast, and he had a conversation with himself where he was like, you know, why am I writing these negative songs? Why am I living this negative life? Like, what am I doing with my life? What's wrong with me? You know, and he completely changed, and he went back and started making music again and wrote songs that were completely different from what he'd written with the Mary Janes, literally like night and day.
In the Mary Janes, you know, not maybe not something that I meant to do, but I think I tended to write songs that were quite miserable, really, or depressing in a way. And now everything I write is just so much more uplifting. It's kind of, you know, generally I have a happier outlook on everything now.
He became quite Marley-esque. You know, he really kind of, whenever he played, there was a real positivity in it. There was nothing fake about it. It was genuine. And he became much more concerned. And again, the war child thing, that was all part of it. But the positivity he got from that, he really used.
He was like a shadow had lifted from him. And it was a really beautiful thing. It was like meeting Mick when he was 19 again.
He looked like a focused man. He didn't look like he had any kind of a death wish on him. He didn't look like, you know, but he looked focused. And as I said, his energy was clean, very clean energy. And
I got a phone call out of the blue, and I hadn't been talking to Mick for yonks, you know. And he says, Ronan, do you know anyone who's looking for a flat? I said, give me half an hour. I remember coming into the flat, throwing my bags down. He gave me the inside room. He'd probably cock his eye and say, kettle, you know. And I think we sat for 3 days or whatever we did. It just sat and didn't even talk to each other. And there was so much conversation to have, but there was just, you know, it was all being said anyway. The fact that we were both, after burning so much of the last 10 years, to still be at square one.
It was at that point really that he reconnected with Glen, and he would have done a lot of touring with us.
We came back into each other's lives in a very real way, in a very supportive way. I'd been through the Frames experience, was very deep in it. And Mick had been through the Mary Janes experience and had all of that knowledge. And we basically started touring again together. We went to Vienna, and we did some gigs. And we went to Czech Republic and we did some gigs. We went to the States. Whenever I was going off on solo trips or whatever, I'd bring him with me. We'd always go do these things together. And it was very, very important to me. Because me and Mick were kind of like brothers, you know.
Yeah, it was a great time, and it only started growing, and that's when loads of things started happening for him. Glenn picked him up and started touring him. I was touring, you know. There was telephones and we were talking to each other constantly, and it was just like, it felt like, great, this is it, we're on. Everything's gonna roll now, you know?
I remember him telling me that himself and Glenn were going to go off and start doing gigs together. But he said Glenn panicked because he was 13 and he wasn't famous.
So yeah, did a lot of touring during that time and got to know people from all over the world. People that have become friends of ours now, you know, that we've kept in touch with ever since, just that they met along the way.
Well, we hung out a little bit in New York, and we had an amazing night one time. We stayed up all night. It was the night I wrote Kathleen. We stayed up all night in Asbury Park, and we had played a little art gallery there, Glen and Mick and I believe Mark Geary and I, and we went swimming in the ocean, which right there was probably a terrible decision.
He started recording some songs. He recorded some songs with Carl Odlum. One of them was Heyday, a new song he had written. Great song.
Like it started out, I had a computer, like, and I just kind of started getting into kind of, you know, do my own stuff, recording my own stuff, and I had very kind of little kind of gear at the time. That was it. It was a computer and stuff. We never expected anything to come out of it. It was just me messing around on the computer and Mick just, you know, singing a few bars of a song, and you know.
And I remember like hearing songs like Kid Song or Heyday or those songs for the first time and kind of going, all right, this is different now.
I think the songs got way more focused, and I think like lyrically and I think musically, it's just all kind of locked together.
And I think it was a beautiful thing to see him recording again and that he was gigging again on his own, you know, so you could see great joy coming from that, you know, and he was as good as anything around at the time then, you know, because you'd always said Glen was always so prolific and always kind of moving in the right direction, and then Mick's stuff was like a completely different type of timbre, you know. So I mean, I just thought that it had arrived, you know, his music and him as a songwriter had arrived, you know.
For him, once you heard something coherent and something good coming back that wasn't a Mary Jane's thing, that like had his name just on it, he kind of said, all right, you know, this is actually a viable thing now, you know, it's not just something. And in a lot of ways it happened sort of by accident, if you know what I mean. There was no huge kind of planning or anything involved in it.
We got together and we made a cover. We just went through a bunch of graphic stuff. I had this book of graphics and I was just going through it. We found the picture of the little kid looking over the table with the moon and stars, and we decided that would be the cover. And then there was another bit of a video still from some stuff I was shooting of Mick in New York. Just stuff we were walking around. And there was a video still of a young lad in a fountain, which we used as the cover of his first single. And you know, we'd sit at home and we'd cut out the covers back in his flat in Dartmouth Square, and we'd make up 100 copies, gluing them together and writing on the CDs. And it was all very, you know, releasing his first single. We were putting some in Road Records, and there was definitely a real sense of DIY and a real excitement around the first thing he's put out as Mick Christopher. It was like really exciting.
So I've got this EP out, but I just, you know, me being me, I never got around to getting it into any shops apart from one in Dublin called Road Records. Because I'm like that, you know. So the only way you can get it is to go to Road Records or to get it off me. And me being me, I don't have any with me. You know, but if anyone's pushed, I'll, you know, take names and I'll send it to you.
You know, he would make up enough to bring to a gig. Sometimes he wouldn't have enough when he'd be at the gig. People would hand him a fiver and their address. It was a very honest system, you know, or somebody would get in touch with him by email and say, can I get a copy of your CD? Yeah, no problem, give me your address, I'll send it to you, send me a fiver. You know, there was none of this pay in advance kind of thing. It was, you know, I'll send it out to you, and people did send him the money.
He used to write his phone number in pen on the back of the CDs. So anyone who went into Road Records to buy the CD had Mick's phone number. And like, people would text him that he didn't know and say, hey Mick, got your EP, really liked it, I hope you're well. And he'd text them back, and school kids and everything. And it was just brilliant. It was just like, he just cut through everything best. Like, here's my number, send me a text and or call me or whatever you want. And people did, you know.
If you think about it, he was a very driven guy, and for a long time, always feeling like you're just one step behind actually making it. Whereas now, no one else, he didn't require validation from anybody else to say, oh, great, you're making it. It was him and his guitar. As long as he could eat and travel, he could do it.
if we can continue doing what we do now, just going from place to place and playing, that's basically all I want to do it all. I could do this forever.
Well, bones to the left of me, bones to my right. Well, I can't decide what to take from this flight. Oh, silk, you silly major, silk is our food. You've been out there looking, but you find nothing good, and so missed the little backdrop. Backdrop was poor. Didn't show the story, had a guess to be sure. And still, the silly major, he don't know what to do. He been out there looking, but he found nothing good. And so, what to do? Well, except to say, poor little you. 'Cause we've been out here looking for life. Yeah, we've been out here looking for life. Oh, while you're sitting idly by, 'cause that's what good friends do. That's what good friends do for you.
I first encountered Mick in 2001. We were doing a big tour and we needed an opening act. So I contacted Glen Hansard, and I asked if the Frames would like to do it.
We had some correspondence, and me and Mick knew him from Waterloo Road, where he lived, and we'd sometimes see him. But he kind of knew us and kind of didn't.
I got to know Glen around about 87. He was this very intense bloke with long ginger hair who used to look at me very meaningfully. When I meet him now, he still looks at me very meaningfully.
So Mike had asked me about this tour, and I was going out with the Frames.
But he said, how about my mate, Mick Christopher? So I didn't know the name Mick Christopher, but Glen sent me some of his music and I liked it.
He loved it. And he was really excited. This is perfect. This guy's brilliant. Put me in touch with him.
But I was in work that day. Mick phoned me. It was one afternoon. And I was all excited. He was like, you're not going to believe this. I just got a call from Mike Scott. Brilliant. Now, this is amazing. And he's like, did you hear what I said? Mike Scott. Mike Scott himself rang me. Not his manager, not his tour manager. Mike Scott rang me. Did you hear me?
It's hard to describe what a huge deal it was, because, you know, the Waterboys were kind of heroes that we could reach out to and talk to.
So for Mick to go out and open up for the Waterboys was a massive deal, you know.
I did glean that I was one of Mick's musical heroes, yes. I think Glen had made it clear to me, yes. Well, Mick never said anything gushing or embarrassing to me.
So that was, I'm going to say the 11th of October. He got that phone call in around that time anyway. And he headed off a tour with them on the 31st.
I remember speaking to him on the phone just before he went, and he was asking me, what's it like on the sleeper bus? You know, because he'd never been on the sleeper bus before, and I'd spent the last 2 years on sleeper buses. So I was like, it's deadly, you'll love it. And he's come, oh, brilliant, I can't wait.
They called up to him with a tuner and a few packs of strings, because he didn't have a tuner, so he borrowed one from the Frames for the tour. So I went up, gave him the tuner and the leads, and he was heading off the next day on the trip, and geez, it was really exciting. There was a real, air of him going off to do something on his own.
That was kind of the way it felt. It was like, finally it's happening, finally it's brilliant, and also, finally you're back. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was a point where we weren't sure he could walk, let alone tour again.
I remember on that night when we were leaving, we were out on the steps up to the front door, and he was looking forward to Christmas that year because he felt he was going to have money, you know, for presents and all this, and he was really looking forward to it. But it's the weirdest thing, but I remember hugging him that night and saying, Michael, make sure you come back. And Weirs had never said anything like that to him before, you know. So the next morning he rang me at work, because I was working then, and he rang me and he was telling me he was on the way to the airport, and then I heard from him again when he arrived in Birmingham.
We were playing 2,000-seater theatres and ballrooms up and down the UK and in Europe.
he just showed up at my door. And I went to see him at the Brixton Academy, which is an enormous venue, and it was just him up on stage with his guitar. And, you know, we went and hung out and did a bit of backstage legging for a bit, and then he went on his way, and he was so happy. I mean, it was kind of a dream come true.
And you know, I only knew Mick for about 5 weeks. He and I went for a long walk in Bristol, up a hill near the venue. And we hit it off pretty good. He was a handsome guy. I never liked that sort of skull cap thing he wore. I never thought that suited him. I thought he was such a handsome bloke. But we hit it off. I really liked him.
They had a couple of gigs in England. Then the tour was kind of going all over Europe. There was Germany, Holland, France, Belgium, I think, as well. A number of different places they were playing.
I got a few messages from him. The gigs are going great. Having a ball out here. You know, he was selling CDs. You know, he was doing it. This was actually the first, I guess, proper professional foray into international touring that Mick had ever done.
The duty of an opening act is to steal fans from the headline act and to make things as hot as possible for them. Blow them off if you can. And I would always hope that our opening acts would do that for us, and I like the challenge, I like the competition. And Mick was good, stiff competition. I don't remember anything about the Groningen gig at all. Even now, I'm trying to picture the venue in Groningen. I'm seeing a square hall with raked, not seats, but benches, raked benches. But that might not be Groningen, it might be some other Dutch city.
I think he'd played to 20,000 people that night or something.
It sold more CDs that night, apparently, than anywhere else on the tour. Had a great night.
Oh, we got the minds and we got the money. We got plenty of time 'cause we're on it. We got dreams just like the rest, but we've been and not hiding our souls in the shadows. We stand up and we fight when it matters. We like facing up to the world 'cause we've been oh, but what will we do for the crowd? Oh, well, you know there's no rush on us now.
He'd gone missing. Mick had gone missing and he didn't turn up when he was meant to turn up. I think, was he travelling on the crew bus? He might have been riding with the crew on their bus and didn't turn up.
I remember trying to get in touch with him on the Saturday afternoon. We'd spoken on the Friday night. I arranged this on the Saturday night, but in the meantime I tried to get in touch with him because, again, to top up his phone, and I wasn't getting any response. Thought nothing of it at that stage. Text him the number, text again saying, did you get that? Did it work? The whole lot. Never heard anything back.
The last text I got off him was just, you know, where's me mate? A couple of nights before we got news that he had fallen over.
This was pieced together after the fact, but the Waterboys had been playing that night, and Mick, as a support act, travelled on the crew bus. So he was out drinking with the crew. Mick left the group because he was going to another bar, and he was walking down the street, the name of which I can't remember, and ironically enough, there's a bar called the Troubadour, and then Mick was going to a bar that was opposite the Troubadour, and if you look at this bar, there's the bar, you kind of go down steps to it, and there's this. The Dutch, I curse them for this, they're so into conserving their space that all their steps are so steep. So if you look in the middle of the building, there's these really steep steps.
Whatever way, the entrance to the bar was immediately followed by some steps, and maybe he thought he was going up into the bar. Anyway, he turned around, slipped, And people had reported seeing this lad just basically fall over, but he wasn't getting up. And so an ambulance was called and Mick was taken to the hospital where he had suffered a really massive brain injury and swelling and bleeding on the brain.
We got a phone call on Sunday afternoon to say that he was in hospital. I can't remember who rang us. I think it might have been one of the water boys. And then we got in touch with the hospital and they said he was unconscious. But you still think he's going to be, you know, you think Mick, he'll be okay, you know.
They brought us in and I mean, he was hooked up to, I think, 16 different machines or something, and it was unbelievable. Then a nurse came and he said, you know, where are you staying? I don't even know where I am, never mind where I'm staying. So he said, don't worry, we'll sort everything. So they organised rooms for us in a building on the grounds of the hospital.
Got straight onto a plane, went over to Bronagh, went into the hospital, and it was bad.
And I went over and I sort of sat by his bed and sang him songs that we would have sung here, and sang songs that I was working on, and just chatted away. But you know, looking back, it's just the blitheness of being 19. You know, at no point did it occur to me that he wouldn't be all right. You know.
And every day there was new news. Every day, you know, I think he even opened his eyes at one point, and then he went back. So there was possibilities he was going to come out of this.
Yeah, it was really just a waiting game. You know, some days were good, some days not so good. And I mean, on the good days, we were all so positive. You know, got to a point where we had ICU decorated, and there was paintings on the walls and everything. It was unbelievable, you know.
They had a blackboard up in the room where he was, and so they wrote M-I-C-K, you know. And Lisa Hannigan came over, you know, and she seen it and went over and rubbed out the K, you know.
And we organised a concert to help with the hospital bills. Everybody played, just everybody showed up. Played at Vicar Street, and that was on the 28th. And we had gotten some good news, and it looked like everyone was very positive. Looked like Mick might pull out. You know, his bloods were getting better. All the monitors were all showing better signs. It looked like things were moving in the right direction. And sometime during that gig, Mick turned for the worst.
It was that night, while the gig was happening, that we got the call to come back into the ICU. They said at that stage, they kind of knew, you know, it wasn't going to make it any further.
When we came off stage, we were told, basically, it's over. You know, his brain had flooded, and basically he was being kept alive on the machines, but he wasn't there anymore.
The doctor came to me and he says, I'm going to have to turn off the machines, you know, for your sons. Well, I said, and I says, when can I make up my mind? No, he says, I'm making it up for you, you know, it's my decision.
We sat with him for the night, and we knew that Glen and another friend of ours, who we always called Milky, Sinead, and Donal, were due back again the next day. And we said, you know, his friends are coming back tomorrow. And they said, well, okay, we'll wait. We'll wait till everybody's here.
There was a bunch of us on the train, and Mick's life support was going to be turned off when we got there. So I remember being on the train and going like, what's the hurry? Why don't we just like get off this train and get on another train? It was a really weird feeling.
I went in on my own, just felt I needed to talk to him, and I was afraid if the machine, switched off the machine, that he'd fight, or you just don't know how, you know, that he'd struggle or something, and I couldn't watch that, you know. So I said to him, Michael, you always had a mind of your own, you decided, you know, what you wanted, but I said, I want you here, but it's up to you now, you know. I had to say my goodbyes. I remember Glen giving out to me when he arrived, you know, why did you do that? But I said I had to, because see somebody struggle or that, you know, thinking that, I don't know, I felt he needed to, you know, to know we could go, you know, when he was ready. It's very, very hard.
And that afternoon, we sat with him, and the doctors explained what was going to happen. And, you know, Mick wasn't there anymore, and he looked different. I mean, he was, even though he looked, you know, he was, just something was gone. You could feel it in the room when you walked in. He was there before, but he wasn't there that last day.
I think it was probably Glen said, you know, we should go, you know, we'll leave you now. And we just said, no, you know, you've always been part of his life. They were always his friends. So it was actually the 6 of us there with him when they switched everything off.
The doctor started taking off all the instruments that was plugged into him, and the colour just went, you could see it going down his face, you know.
I'd say 10 minutes max, and you knew he was gone. That was it, you know. So I think if ever there was any doubt, you knew then. Because I'd always had this vision of like, oh my God, maybe he could have come back and they turn off the machines and he will. But there wasn't even, you know, a couple of minutes. He was gone immediately. So you knew then that, well, obviously his body just wasn't able to fight itself, you know, and that was it.
And we all sat with him and we all cried, and, you know, some prayed. And then really, I mean, what do you do? There's such a absurdity to it. Because suddenly then Mick was gone. Mick's body changed. We saw him, we were with him, everything changed. Life went out of this vibrant young man that we knew and loved, and suddenly he just wasn't there.
I was there getting coffee somewhere in the hospital, and it just felt so unreal because he had such a life force, and the most life force of anyone that I had ever known.
We spent a couple of days there, and we came home, and then of course we had the burden of telling all of his friends.
I was in the flat, and I answered the door, and Nina was in the door, and she said, Mick's dead. And I said, no, he's not. And she said, he is. And I said, he's not. And I said, come in. I left the door open, I came in scratching and put the kettle on. And I thought, I don't want to hear this. What can I do about this? And yeah, I just caught out. There's nothing I can do about this.
He arrived home on the following Thursday evening, really. He was brought home to the house on Friday.
And we all went out to Clondalkin, out to Vaughan and Harry's house, you know, I mean, like everybody descended, you know.
From the time we walked into this house, for a whole week, you couldn't move in it.
In the evenings, say,
In the evening, from 6 o'clock on, you couldn't move in this house. And it was like a session every night. It was music. I'm sure the neighbours thought we were all mad, but that was his life, you know. Every musician was here.
Came from everywhere, like, I mean, not just Ireland. People flew in from the States, they came from Australia, Cayman Islands, like, you name it.
One night here, the doorbell rang, and there's Josh Ritter, about 6'3" or 4. He says, I'm Josh Ritter, and I just flew in from Iowa. I said, you're amazing, thanks very much, come on in. He says, I don't want to be anywhere else, you know.
That night we all went to Whelan's, and they were playing his music, and it was just a really special moment. Yeah, really, really special. And being with his family and being with the people that listened to his music, and it was like, yeah, it was a really powerful moment. Yeah.
All the lads got up to speak first. Ronan O'Snoddy, Eric Healy, Colin McNumra, Glen got up to talk, and then when we were walking down the church with the coffin, on the wall, there was a brilliant man up there. He stopped, you know, and all the lads were playing music up above, and he stopped right at the balcony, you know, he was looking up at the balcony and waited till
They sang Heyday. When you
he's all singing Heyday, yeah.
I saw just the word Heyday written there somewhere one day, and I was thinking, you know, there's this big thing about, you know, people talk about bands and they go, that band was great in their heyday. And I was thinking, why does there have to be a time when you're great and then the rest of the time you're not, you know? And so then I wrote this. So this is basically about every day being your best day. It's called Heyday, and I've been with Christopher, and thanks very much for this.
Hey, for the sun, for the light, for the right, and for the masters, oh, we come to be kind, to be warm here and after we've been out, but we're back because we're graced in these matters and we'll rise. And we did a little love, but we walk. We make a sign for the misto, make a little call to the right, to the ball, and to the mast top, and we fool around now and again. We're looking good, but just as friends. And this is our heyday, baby, and we're not gonna be afraid to shine, 'cause we can make our heyday last forever. And ain't that what it's all about? Oh, living in our own terrible way.
But the interesting thing as well is that Mick's album only really came to light after he died. Like, a very few small amount of people had heard it, which were basically people who were working on it. So, you know, the idea of getting to sit down and listen to like an album of Mick's for 50 minutes, like that didn't come up until after he died.
The fact that the album got made at all is kind of, it's miraculous in a way that he'd done all of his parts before he went away on tour. Wasn't kind of piecing together the album after his passing. It was very much, the album was there, it just needed a few kind of different things.
So basically I had a list, a piece of paper of kind of what was to be done on each song, and very specific, you know, and the people who were doing it and the people who were, you know, and what instruments. And so I just basically, that was my blueprint, you know, for finishing the album. And I just stuck to that kind of religiously.
I spent a lot of time talking to Carl Odlum. You know, we'd discuss what happens next, what do we need. And the way I'd put it with Carl is like, you call me when you need me to do something for you, or you need me to organise anything. So he said to me one time, you know, we're pretty much there, but we just need to finish off these little bits Mick wanted in each track. He said, how are we going to do this? We need to, and I'm thinking, you know, we get a studio, how do we get everybody together? And then somebody said to me, it was coming up to Easter, and somebody said to me, are we going to have the party this year? Mick always had a party in his flat on Good Friday. Have you asked Mick the day before if he was having a party? Absolutely not. Wasn't happening. But you'd always get a call the following night, come down, and there was a party. You know, it was always last minute, but I think everybody knew it was happening except Mick, put it that way. Everybody was prepared for this party, but Mick would be adamant, I'm not having a party this year. But there was always a party there. So somebody said to me, coming up close to Easter, are we having the party this year? And I was just horrified. I was like, no, I can't be in that flat that night having a party. It just didn't feel right, you know. But then it just dawned on me, what's the one night of the year that nobody's going to have a gig? You know, that we can actually get everybody together in the one room that we need. So we set it up that we use Mick's flat on the night, just get the people there we needed, and Carl could finish off any bits that he needed recorded. So we got it all done that night.
And like, I mean, there were a lot of people saying, oh, I want, you know, can I play on this album and stuff? And I said no, because it was never, that you were never in, that intent was never there, you know. So I kind of had to put my foot down. I think it was the fairest way in my mind, you know, whether it was the right way or not. But like, I just thought that was, to me, the best way to approach it. Make the album we were always going to make, and don't let kind of events dictate and push it in a different direction, you know. Like, Mick's death didn't imbue Skylarking with anything special. What's special about Skylarking is Skylarking, you know. It's like, it would have stood up on its own, you know. And it's a great record, like, it is a brilliant record. And it had nothing to do with that. It's, to me, the best way I can say it is, Skylarkin is great in spite of that, as opposed to because of it, you know. And I think a lot of people, because it's a posthumous release and stuff, it's very inextricably linked with his death. But I think it's, as a work, it stands on its own, you know. It's a great piece of music, you know.
Although it wasn't an ideal time in the music business to release an album, the perfect time for us was going to be Mick's first anniversary. So that's what we aimed for. And it came out in the shops that day.
So to hear Skylarkin for the first time after Mick had passed was pretty full on.
If you listen to the album, you listen to Heyday, you listen to all that stuff, it's full of joy for life, you know.
Heyday is about that, you know. It's about that, like, this is it, you know. This is your heyday, you know, and you're not gonna be afraid to shout. They're words to live by, and like, he really was the guy to say them, you know. Yeah. It's badass.
Like, I was on Phantom when the album came out and the EP was released as well. And we played that, particularly Heyday, off the air. Like, I mean, if you looked at I'm sure if whoever got the CD, the Phantom CD library, I'm sure if you held it up and you looked at it, you'd see laser marks all over it.
I just think it's a piece of work. The whole record is a brilliant album, you know. I really think it's got where Mick was at, everything that he'd been through at the time.
You know, the song Skylarkin was the song he was most proud of. I remember when he wrote that, I remember him saying, God, I've written something, and I'm really... And he wasn't the kind of guy that would in any way brag about his work. He sometimes would say, I've got something and I'm happy with it. But I suppose that song, Skylarkin, was the one that was the last song he wrote. It was the last song he recorded. And in a way, I sort of feel like that was his swan song. That was the song that, in a way, once he had written it, even though it's not the biggest song of his career, even though it's not the defining song of his career, it's the song for me that very much speaks of the trajectory and maturity of him as a writer and him speaking his truth. Because he was all about the truth for that last batch of recordings and songs.
You learned a lot when you were out there, about this foolish game. Never let your nightmare get in your way, and staring out your bedroom window. 'Cause you don't wanna play. Well, you believe now what you wanna. We're playing anyway. Skylarkin, isn't it a way that we can go?
just feel that he's on tour or something, you know, it's crazy.
So we're over at Newlands every Sunday, and it's great, you know, you never miss a Sunday over there, you know. Have a chat with him, we talk to him like he was listening to us, you know.
Someone said to me at his funeral, they say, even in his leaving, he's given us something here, you know what I mean? But that's, you know, that's the way he was, like he affected all these lives when he was alive.
We used to think after he died, like all the musicians that he was friendly with, or all his friends, seemed to come up all of a sudden, you know, they started to do well, you know, so you wonder.
Yeah. Mick went behind the curtain and he says, I'm going back, I'm fed up with this, I'm going to take care of you guys.
I just remember that feeling of people kind of waking up in 2002 and buckling down. Certainly that sense of, I think Glenn has spoken about this, I think in the case of the Frames, I think they just hit the road rather than have to face, in Glenn's case, what had happened, I think.
You know, there was a massive loss of innocence. It changed us all. You know, we grew up the day Mick died.
It was such a deep emotional chasm in everyone's lives that I think it's part of the fossil fuel of songwriting, you know, that feeling.
Because what Mick was saying was, this is it, go for it. The decision by his friends, I think, to celebrate his life rather than mourn his passing became a huge inspiration for next generations of musicians.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Mick Christopher. Thank you for the beautiful music. Thank you for a beautiful night. Thank you for being here. Thank you, all the Christophers. Thank you, every generation. Thank you.
I feel him, you know, and I often dream that he's still alive. I dream about him often. And in my dreams, there's a couple of dreams I've had where I said, what's it like where you are? In my mind, he's living a kind of a quiet monk-like kind of existence where he is. He brought me to a river in a dream recently and he pointed at a ring under the water. It was a little gold ring. It's down under the water. He says, one day me and you will go get that together. You know? And then we just walk, the two of us just walk away from the river. And I have to say goodbye to him because I have to come back to being awake and he's going to be where he is.
such a great old man. I mean, he would be such a great 50-year-old man, but an even better old man, because he was such an old sort of soul and, you know, in a young body.
He was always an old man, in a way, you know? He was always with his tea and sitting there and having a smoke and dispensing wisdom, you know, and shut up, I want to watch EastEnders, you know. He was always an old man, so I think he would be just exactly the same.
Mick's dad has got really good hair. So I have no doubt that Mick would have great hair. And I've no doubt he'd have a lot of stories to tell and that he would still be writing amazing songs.
I think he would have been a relentless dreamboat, continue to be a relentless dreamboat. Yeah, I think he was always himself, and I think he would be himself, just older.
You know, when I went away to live in England and I came back, then he was fully engaged in the whole spirituality, you know, and talking about spirituality and just wonderful and knowledge, you know. And that was the thing. We were going to do the yoga, myself and him on Monday in, right? Can you imagine? I said, we're going to yoga tomorrow, I'll come and meet you. And I think we ended up going to Whelan's Inn and we didn't come home.
Jeez, I stuck his moccasins on last week, you know. I was up rummaging around. I have a little cabin up there. And I found them. I was like, flipping class. I love these things. He brought them back from India. So I was walking around to him, so I was chatting away to him. You won't need these.
By the way, you know, he wasn't a real vegetarian. Do you know this? He gave us so much grief about eating meat. He was having a burger. Right? See, Roisin, who used to live upstairs, was also vegetarian. She went out with Carl. And only 5 years ago did she tell us that the two of them used to go, when there was no one else there, they'd go, oh fuck it, and run out and have rasher sandwiches, have bacon sandwiches. Because they couldn't resist it.
No, he was just very special, you know. Great crack, great crack.
That's enough about all of that, I think, now. All right?
And we're not gonna be